Welcome to another episode of the Financial Armor Show. My name is Brad Cooper, president of Cooper Financial Investments, and I want to welcome, as always, my wonderful, amazing co-host, Tony Shore. How are you doing today, Tony?
Doing great. Great to be here, Brad.
Wonderful.
Excited. I've had a good week. I went down and saw my parents, helped them out a little bit again this past weekend, and spent some time with the family. Got outside. It's been beautiful, hasn't it? The weather?
Oh, wow. I mean, not only in Arizona where you expect that this time of
Right.
year, but from cold Minnesota, it's not so cold, is
Yeah,
it? You've had some
Minnesota.
amazing.
I normally call it Minnesota, but I can't anymore. I can't even use that, Brad, because it's hardly snowed at all here this year. And yeah. I
That
mean,
is
we
crazy.
at our house, we maybe got a total this whole winter of 9 inches, and I wanna tell you last year at this time, we had about 4 feet of snow on the ground right at
Wow.
this time last year. Yeah.
Well, if that continues over the years to come, we're going to have half of the snowbirds in Arizona selling their homes and going back to Minnesota for
Yeah,
the all year round weather.
you might get rid of the snowbirds, which it might help you Arizona natives out a little bit, but the tourism industry and the housing industry won't like that if the snowbirds stop
No,
coming down. Yeah, it
no,
was
not
just
at
an
all.
unusually mild winter. I mean,
Yeah.
last year we had tons of snow. This year we had no snow, but it has been mild. It has been a mild winter here. I hate to say it.
No, no complaints. I know I was just sharing with you before the show. It's just weather's just perfect here in Arizona. Just sitting outside and just enjoying every second of it before the summer comes. And
Yes,
you know what summer in
exactly.
Arizona brings? Not snow.
No, no, it brings a lot. In fact, it probably brings me. I'm gonna be heading down there
That's
eventually
right.
to spend some fun in the sun, time in the sun there.
Bring your sunblock and your beach towel and
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
because I'm half English, half Irish. So I've said this before, Brad, but I have 3 stages: white, burn, and peel. So I only have 3 stages. There is no tan.
No other
This is what
tan.
you get. It's white, burn, and peel. So,
Oh, that's
I do
nice.
love Arizona, though. Now, Brad, on the show today, what are we talking about?
Well, we're going to talk about what the new generation retirement system can do for you. You know, as we're looking at financial planning, the investment world, the insurance world, just what I like to call all pieces of the financial puzzle that's so important to your financial future and having a successful financial future, things have changed. I've been doing this for over 30 years, and we've seen so much change in our industry the last 5 to 10 years, and we're still going to continue to see change. We're going to talk a little bit about that today. I just read an article just over the weekend, Tony, where it just talked about what the average retiree is looking for today, just not investments. And historically, you know, most retirees that we would meet, they would have a good portfolio. Some of them, usually way too risky for
Right.
what their risk level is.
Sure.
However, it stopped there. And no one in our industry was talking about the basic common money principles, I call it, to holistic financial planning
Mhm.
of tax planning, estate planning, social security planning, income planning, and the list goes on. And that's what this study revealed and talked about how retirees are looking for not just one piece of the puzzle, but all the pieces and what firms can offer those.
Well, yeah, and I like the way you put it, a new generation of retirement planning, a new gen, because retirement has changed over the years, like you said, so much. I mean, even in the past 10 years, there's been so many changes to laws regarding saving for retirement, regarding taxes in retirement. So I'm glad we're digging into this today, Brad. I mean, I think working with a financial services professional 30, 40 years ago, my parents, they didn't have a financial planner. I wish they would have.
Right.
But there was a time when you got your pension and you worked for the same company for 40, 50 years, then you got your pension. And and then you passed away, and many people in their 60s. Well, now we're living longer. There are no more pensions. So the tools and the rules have changed, haven't they?
Oh, have they ever? And that's caused, a lot of the companies in the financial service industry to change. However, a
Yes,
lot has not changed, and that's
that's
sad
true.
because the ones that are not changing is going to have a direct correlation between you and your retirement plan going forth in the future. And I love the term new generation retirement system because that's what we are doing.
Right.
And really, we're guided, Tony, by three essential principles and always have been. Number one is fiduciary. And I know that term is thrown out so much in our industry, but fiduciary, always doing what's in the best interest of the client, not what's in the best interest of the advisor and how much he or she is making. Second is transparency. What I love about the holistic financial planning approach we take, being a fiduciary, we're very transparent in more than one way. And one of the areas that you will know with us and as a fiduciary is exactly the costs, the fees, everything we do, and a little bit more. And last but not least, especially which is changing, it seems like daily, is technology.
Mhm.
You want to be working with a firm that has one of the best technology platforms of any, and because that's the future. And then, which we're not going to get into on today's show, Tony, but this is a topic by itself, is AI,
Oh
which
yeah,
uh,
technology has come a long way, even in the last year. I mean, you mentioned AI. I mean, within the last couple of years, that's just come on really strong. I mean, whether you're looking at what to invest in the markets, or whether you're looking at how it's changed businesses, it's changing financial planning too, isn't it?
oh, it is. And if you're not familiar with AI or not familiar with that term or abbreviation, artificial intelligence.
Yes,
What's crazy, and I'm learning more about this, especially from the younger generation.
sure.
I mean, we could use AI in some of the platforms and just put in, we need a script for a radio show, Tony, and it would spit out, pages and pages of content if we wanted to use it that way. But we're not leveraging it like most, but it's going to be the future.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of great things about AI, but there's a lot of bad things too. And that's
Yes.
what we're going to have probably a specialist come on the show and talk specifically more in the future about AI and the positive and the negative aspects of it. But
Yeah. Well,
but
our listener, but our viewers, especially if people are hearing us on the radio, they may not realize this, but the show is also on video and available on your YouTube channel, Brad. And I just want to mention that if our viewers are wondering whether the co-host on this show is AI generated, they know I'm not, because if you used an AI generator, I'd be much better looking, right? I mean, that's the bottom line. This is the real deal here. This is what you get, right?
Um, that's true. I just saw and read an article about AI and how it just made the person look 20 years younger. Maybe we should start, Tony, using AI. We would
Yeah,
look handsome, wouldn't we? We would definitely have a face for TV then, and
yeah,
not just radio on that.
yeah,
But just alluding a little bit more to the essential principles and just talking about fiduciary, we break that down to two focuses, Tony. Fiduciary, it's processes, but more important, and we talk a lot about this, it's relationship based practice. We are a local financial firm that is relationship based, and I think that's what a lot of people are seeking for today, more so than ever. And that's kind of what we take pride in is being a fiduciary and focusing on relationships and processes, but then also knowing that we have the resources for our clients. We have the best of the best strategic partners and alliances, whether it's tax planning, estate planning, social security planning, and the list goes on. We have the smartest people, in my opinion, in the United States that can offer advice through Cooper Financial for our clients. And a lot of that is at no cost, Tony, for our clients,
Yeah.
which that's one of many things that helps me sleep at night because, knowing that the advice they're giving our clients, it's the same advice I'm taking as a financial advisor, as a client too. I'm doing the same as what we're preaching, if you will.
Yeah, whether it's legacy and enhanced estate planning, whether it's Social Security maximization, healthcare planning for healthcare and retirement. I know that you look at the big picture when you say holistic. That's what you're talking about. And so,
Right.
your advice then to our listeners and viewers out there is that they work with somebody who's a fiduciary who's going to be looking out for their best interests and can look at all these areas and help them put together a comprehensive plan. That's what they need, right?
Yes, for starters, but I would say even more important than that is the follow through, a commitment to our clients to follow through with that plan. And by having a local presence, someone that you can come in and see face to face whenever you want. And as times change, I can promise you one thing: what's going on today in our world is probably going to be different in 3 years, 5 years, maybe 3 months. I mean,
True.
we're changing. So it's our responsibility. I take this very personal that we keep our clients up to date as things change. And once we put together a plan for them, we follow through with that. As things change, we may make some adjustments,
Yeah.
but we are there. And one last thing I'll share with that, and part of being a fiduciary, but also just being a good human being, in my opinion, is over the last several years, between our Oral Valley office and Mesa office, Tony, we collectively have lost to death over 50 clients. And
Wow.
these aren't just clients, they're friends. We've
Yeah.
had relationships with a lot of these, wonderful people for the last, 10, 20 years. So when a spouse, widower goes through that process, we're bringing them into our office and they're not having to deal with a toll-free number with 5 different companies and being on hold for 2 hours and not knowing what to do because there's so many things, so much follow-up, so many changes of accounts you have to do. But we're bringing our friends in, our clients, sitting down with not only us, we'll have our attorney there, we'll have our CPA there, and we'll bring them in and their children. We'll hold their hand through the process. That is probably the most important aspect of what we do because there's hundreds, if not thousands, of companies, Tony, that do what we do to an extent, but they stop usually after the investment part. And if you're a small fish in a big ocean, and I mean not having millions and millions of dollars, you're not going to get the attention by the majority of the big firms. And
Hmm.
that's what I've seen.
Yeah, and that's so you're really making the case for not only working with a financial professional, but make sure they're an independent, not tied to one, beholding to one big company, so they can actually uh, look at all the tools in the toolbox for you and aren't limited to just one company's offerings. I think that's a good point to point out here. But
Right.
when we're talking about you call it the new generation retirement system. What's one of the things we have to keep in mind? I mean, what's another step in the new gen process?
Technology, which I mentioned earlier, is a big part of that because
Yep.
we're leveraging and using technology for more advanced planning, which impacts our clients more, especially when it comes to design, whether it's a portfolio through our money managers or through our CPA team and experts to help you with better tax efficiency. Meaning that, and we talked about this, on many shows about future taxation and how
Yeah.
that can be a big risk and detriment to your retirement plan. So we're leveraging technology, and I feel so blessed to be part of a group that has one of the best, in my opinion, technology platforms of any company out there, which is actually absolutely free for our clients.
Yeah, yeah, and that's huge. That's really advantageous. In fact, my wife and I use the generational vault.
Yes.
It is a great tool that you offer your clients at no charge, and I can't say enough about it. It's a place where you can have all your important things, your passwords, your photos. You can even create a video and upload it to
Yes.
for your family to have after you're gone. Powers of attorney, wills, trusts, important documents, and your active financial accounts. You can check the status of your IRAs or 401ks within the generational vault. And if something should happen to you, your spouse or your children will be able to access it. Then you give a couple key people the passwords and your financial advisor. But you can restrict access for certain portions and give the family access right away. And it's encrypted, 32-bit encryption, just like banks use. So I can't say enough about the generational vault. It's really great. And for such a powerful tool
Right.
to offer that at no cost, that's really important for people to use, because that's what you need. If something should happen to you and your spouse, that way you don't leave your kids. Where do we find this? Where do we find that? It's all in one place.
You did a good job as far as explaining everything. I just had a conversation a few days ago, Tony, with a client, and and you alluded to this a little bit. As far as what we're doing, we're doing our best to reach out not only to our clients, but getting their children, if our
Yes.
beneficiaries involved, introducing them to the generational vault. And like you said, we can give full access, limited access, as much or as little as you want to your estate, to your beneficiaries. And by doing that, if something happens to you, when something happens to you, there's already a relationship, a face with the name, and your beneficiaries will know exactly where to go to. And I shared this, I think, maybe a few weeks ago, Tony, because I have the generational vault too. Everything that you have in there, I do as well. And I mean, this is how awesome it is. I shared, a few weeks ago that we've been involved with the Mayo Clinic system. My wife's had some
Yeah.
health issues and needs a kidney, and I'm going through the testing. And they asked me, Mr. Cooper, do you have power of attorneys? Do you have a healthcare directive? And I said, absolutely. I pulled it up on my phone through Generational Vault and sent it to them, which is so great. And whether you're here locally or maybe you're over halfway across the world, as long as you have a Wi-Fi connection, you can access all of your personal information.
Yeah, it's huge. So we've covered the generational vault and the technology and having something like that, a virtual safe deposit box where you can securely store copies of these things online. I think that is so important. Now, moving on from that, from the
Yes.
generational vault, and we talked about some transparency. What about the fact and feeling? There's something you call the fact and feeling finder. Is that what you call it?
Yes. Fact and finding filler process.
Yes, yes.
Of our 5-step process, Tony, the first visit with anyone is just really sitting down over a cup of coffee, or if it's in the summer, iced tea or water, and really just visiting with each other, answering questions, learning more about each other to make sure we're a right fit for each other.
Yeah.
When you're interviewing financial service professionals, that should be one of the most important decisions and things you take serious on who you work with. So, but then our second visit is the fact and finding process or session, where basically, which is tied into our technology platform, but it's also a very important part of our process where we're asking you, what's important to you? What are your goals? What are your objectives? What's your risk tolerance? And one of the tools in our generational vault is the color of money risk analysis, which is 11 questions which you can answer to get your own personal risk score. In addition to that, we take our time during that fact and finding session, gather all your information, because as fiduciaries, in order and before we can make any recommendations, we have to know a lot about you, what's important to you, and gather all your information before we can do so.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's really important. So I like that. You have them take that color of money risk analysis to see where they're at as far as, how adverse to risk they are, And of course, that depends on their time horizon too. You call it the color of money, correct? You've mentioned that on the show.
Color of money, but let me talk a little bit more about the colors of money.
Oh, I thought
And
money
so
was green. I just
what
thought that we universally could just say money was green. Of course, that's here in
you
America.
you you have you have a good memory, because most of the money I have, if you're watching online through YouTube, you know, actually what we're using today is sometimes not green. And what color is that?
Gold. It looks like gold to me.
if you're if you're listening and not watching, I just pulled out a credit card
Yeah.
because it seems like we're going more and more toward a cashless society, and that's a different topic, different show someday, which we can talk about. But the colors of money, we break down in three different categories. There's green money, which what's green money? That's CDs, that's checking, savings, fixed index annuities. It's money that your principal is protected, and you cannot lose money if the market goes down. Then there's what's called yellow money. Yellow money is money that's professionally managed by our money managers, that's invested in the market, but the portfolio is based on your risk, and it's actively managed on a daily basis. It's not your typical buy and hold, concept. It's actively managed. But then there's red money. As fiduciaries, we can no longer recommend red money. For the first half of my career, Tony, that's all I did. What's red money? Stocks, bonds, mutual funds, commission based, usually higher fees and normally higher risk, that's not managed. And that's where we're finding, Tony, the majority of new people we sit down with and we gather their information when we're going through and doing a review, an analysis review with our entire team. We're finding probably 99%, if not more, have red money, and they have no idea of the risk and the fees associated with a lot of
Right.
these portfolios.
They probably
So
still they probably tell you how many times, Brad, have you had somebody say or fill out that color of money risk analysis and talk to you, and they say we're very conservative. We don't want any loss. We can't deal with loss, or we're invested currently very conservative. But then you actually run the report that shows where they're at, and they have everything's at risk, everything's in stocks, right?
Absolutely. It reminds me of a story. This happened back in 2015, Tony. I was at a person's home, met with husband and wife, and I'll never forget through our fact and finding session. And I went through the color and money risk analysis and a few other risk tests that we go through. And the wife clearly looked at me and said, Brad, we lost so much money in the 90s and the dot-com crash. We are conservative. We do not want to take risk. I mean, she was bold. So we did a review of all of her accounts. And I'm not going to mention the company's name. And on every statement, on every page, Tony, at the lower left-hand column in all caps, bold font, it said conservative / low risk. Well, after our team did a review and went through, how did this portfolio do in '07, '08, '09? How did this portfolio do in the dot-com crash? We found out that the average mutual fund and stock and bond lost over 35% when the market was down. So this is a true story. I went back to their home and I went through this analysis that our experts and our team, and our support team helped me with. And when I went through that, Tony, she said, Brad, you need to leave. I mean, I was scared. She was red. I thought she was going to have a heart attack. The husband was sitting there scared too with me, I think. And so I got up and left. She hopped in her car and drove directly to the office of her investment advisor and found out that everything I went through was true. And what I discovered was her definition of risk, Tony, did not match her investment firm's definition of risk. So
Right.
here it did have a good ending. I did get back with them. They did move everything over, and now they do have very, very, very conservative, safe accounts with us, and they've been very pleased for the
Sure.
last 9 years.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of people think, well, I've got I've got a very my stock portfolio or my IRA and my 401k, they're very conservative. They're very diversified. I bet you hear that all the time. And then I always say, I've heard that from friends, and I go, but all your money, all your retirement money is in the stock market. Yeah. And I go, okay, so there's risk, there's loss. You could lose 50% of that tomorrow. Well, I'm like,
But
there's no well about it. You could. And now it depends on your time horizon. If you've got
right,
20 years, yeah, that's good. That doesn't matter. But if you're going to retire next year, that's not going to cut it, is it? And that kind of leads
no,
us into retirement income planning, which we only have a couple minutes left, but income planning is another thing. How you plan for income in retirement has changed drastically, and it seems like it changes every year or every 5 years at the most. There are drastic changes as to how you plan for income and retirement, right? I mean, um,
absolutely.
yeah,
And, to add to that, Tony, when you're retired, you need to be focused more on the deaccumulation side than the accumulation side. Because depending on your timing, if you retire, you start pulling money out and the market drops 20, 30%, like it did in 2022, you're in trouble. And there's a good chance you're going to run out of money in the next 7 to 9 years. And that's a topic that is not talked about enough. But if you're down 30%, you need about a 45 to 50% return just to break even the following year. And a lot of
yikes.
folks who lost 20 to 30% of their life savings in 2022, yes, 2023 was a great year. They still have not recouped their loss.
Yeah. Yeah, that's tough. So we're out of time, but if our listeners want to get a hold of you, Brad, how can they do that?
Yes, you can call our office Monday through Friday at 520-543-8345. Again, that's 520-543-8345. Or you can visit our website, financialarmorshow.com. Again, that's financialarmorshow.com. And if you just want to get a second opinion, just sit down over a cup of coffee and visit. I would encourage you to do that, because at the end of the day, and I realize this about myself, especially in the medical healthcare field, you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
So get a second opinion by someone different than the person who gave you the first recommendation that you went with. And I encourage you to do that every 2 or 3 years, regardless of who you're with.
Yeah. And there's no charge, no obligation
No,
to that consultation to sit down, have a cup of coffee or some iced tea, and just chat about where you're at, figure it out. 520-543-8345 is the number. And listeners, that does it for today's episode of the Financial Armor Show with our host, Brad Cooper.
thank you, Tony. See you next week.